This lesson is about visual temperature. Now, value is about how light or dark color is. Visual temperature is about how warm or cool. And of course, you can read more about visual temperature in my book, The Quilter's Color Club. So if you drew an imaginary line on the color wheel from yellow-green to red-violet, the colors to the right are considered cool. Green, blue-green, blue, blue-violet, violet. The colors to the left of this imaginary line are considered warm. Yellow, yellow-orange, orange, red-orange, and red. There are exceptions. Red-violet to me seems generally cooler, and yellow-green to me seems warmer because it's 3/4 yellow. But it's also relative. So if you put red-violet, magenta, next to blue-green, it will seem warm. And if you put red-violet next to orange, it will seem cooler. And even within color families, there are variations. Within the green family, yellow-green, green, and blue-green, they're all considered in the green family, but this is much warmer and this one is considerably cooler. So I made up this board to show you the differences, and I like to group them in groups of warm and cool, but separate them so you can see how different they look. On your left are the warm colors, reds, yellows, oranges, and visual temperature is really quite intuitive. It's probably the easiest of the color concepts for people to grasp because we automatically think of fire, lava, embers, light, heat as being warm, and that's what the colors are. And then we think of grass, sky, and water as being cool because that's what we see in nature. Now, there's an advancing receding quality to visual temperature just as there is with value. As you might expect, warm colors come forward and cool colors recede. And that's why when you go to McDonald's and In-N-Out Burger, they've decorated in yellow, red, and orange. They're trying to grab your attention. In really bright versions, the warm colors can almost seem aggressive. And in soft versions, the cool colors are very, very calming and very soothing. And that's what you might see at the spa. So let's look at some blocks. I love this block. It's called Oregon Trail. Quite a bit to piece because there are interesting shapes, and you can see that visual temperature does a lot to set the personality or the mood of a quilt or a block. The one on your left is very, very warm. There's a little bit of coolness in that center, the corner fabric, the stripe, the violet and red stripe, but overall it's very warm. And if you made a quilt with all of these as blocks, identical blocks, it would be a very bright and maybe even aggressive quilt. The one on the right has some warmth in it from the background, but overall it's cooler. And the center square has some warmth also, and the corner squares, but overall it's cooler and has a little softer feel. Two more examples. This is the King's Crown block, which you're going to be seeing as you work through your homework, your color studies. Again, you can see there's just a slightly different personality to these blocks. The one on the left is a warm, but barely warm because it's magenta, it's red-violet, so it's right on that line. And it has a little bit of warmth in the center square. But because the colors are softer, it doesn't seem very demanding or aggressive. The block on the right is mostly cool. Again, there's a little bit of warmth in the center, but it has overall a more soothing, relaxing kind of feel to it. Wanted to show you a few more things. A vest that I made, I'm going to move these. A vest that I made out of all cherrywood fabrics, and I'm going to show you the front, then I'm going to show you the back so you can see more of the area. I've taught this as a class, and the lesson to me in this vest is balancing visual temperature. I think we naturally crave seeing both warm and cool colors, so I would ask you, if you saw this vest with squares of cherrywood that were all cool, blues and greens, would it be better, would it be more interesting? And I think it would be less interesting, but when you introduce coral and a peach and a pink, you're balancing the visual temperature, and it really gives it a little bit of punch. I had a friend, a student, make a quilt that was all orange and olive greens, various versions of yellow, green, and oranges, and she came to me and she said, "What is missing?" I said, "I think you should look for some colors opposite the color wheel." So she was up in this area, the red and yellow green, so kind of up in the upper area with the warm colors. So I said, "How about considering blue-violet?" And she looked surprised, but she went and she added some blue-violet or violet, I can't quite recall, and it really made the quilt sing. So I think that's why we love scrappy quilts so much, because they balance warm and cool colors. With such a big mix of fabrics in your quilt, you're going to naturally get a nice mix of visual temperatures. A couple of more examples. This is a quilt that's in my book as a project. Tile Dance. And you can see that I have used lots of different colors, warm and cool. The little squares are a mix of warm and cool colors in light and dark values. Now I've thrown in a few batiks to give it a little sparkle. The medium squares are darker in value, and they are mostly cool with some, I see some red in there, there's some warm ones. The larger squares are lighter in value and mostly cool. And then the border fabric, which I hand dyed, is a very, very brilliant yellow-green. The hand-dyed rickrack comes from Rainbow Resource if you're interested. But again, if these were all cool colors or all warm colors, you might feel overwhelmed, or you might actually feel chilly. Some quilts make me feel chilly. So think about balancing visual temperature when you're working with your designs, because I think you'll have a much greater sense of harmony. So your color study this time is to make the King's Crown block, and I've given you the value recipe so you don't have to figure that part out, but I want you to decide whether you're going to go mostly warm or mostly cool. And then if you want extra credit, which is very important I think, then make the block again and bring in accents opposite on the color wheel. So for your warm block that's maybe reds and red oranges and yellows, change one of the fabrics and bring in a cooler color from the opposite side of the wheel. So that's visual temperature. It's a very powerful effect in quilt design, and I think you're going to have fun working with it. Next time we're going to talk about intensity.